because now we have the second panel on bridging innovation and business realities. So what comes next after the end of the projects, how we can continue and have this project be sustainable and exploited. I will have to invite our panelists for this panel. It's Mr. Giulio Mancini from DG Home, Dr. Solon Mias from REA, he's also a project officer, and Dr. Mohamed Abomhara, he's one of our project partners from NTNU. You can have your seats there wherever you want. So welcome, and thank you very much for being here for this panel, for joining us. I will first start with an opening speech from Mr. Mancini, and then we can continue with the questions. So the floor is yours. Or whatever you prefer. You can come here, you can speak from there, whatever you prefer.
I think I can stay here if you hear me and see me. Well, thank you very much. Many thanks, and very good afternoon, everyone. And apologies to again the Commission and the GM in particular hijacking the first part of a panel like earlier today, but we thought it could be interesting to maybe kickstart by sketching a few useful information and even opportunities on the subject of bridging innovation and business realities, very much linked to what we call uptake of the results of research in security, especially those research funded by our program. I work in DG Home, in the Directorate General of Migration and Home Affairs of the Commission, in the unit on innovation and security research, where we manage the EU Civil Security Research and Innovation Program, so including the program that funded METICOS, that we are very, very proud of supporting and having supported this work in research and consortium over the last few years, with the help of the colleagues from the Research Executive Agency, Solon and other colleagues who managed the project. METICOS itself was funded by a specific topic on human factors for border and external security that we designed back in 2018 and 19. And now, as we have seen, I'm very, very happy to have seen the results of the R&D process that you also presented yesterday in the annual security research event that the Commission and the Presidency of the Council organized. Now, the point is what happens now and what could be the opportunities from now on to exploit and use the results, the solutions, the technologies, software, hardware, knowledge that you built, achieved, and presented. And also here, we both are aware of the challenges, and we try to provide some instruments to address that in what we could be termed an EU security innovation policy, where it's not only putting European funding, public funding on funding research, but also trying to, in a longer-term capability development approach, see what happens next and how we can have better European solutions to improve the capabilities, the needed capabilities, in this specific case of border authorities and border checks and travel facilitation. So we try to work on that a lot. We have some instruments. Some of these tools, I'm sure you are aware. We try to bring together the scientific communities, the innovators, the practitioners, the industry, the academia, in initiatives and events like those of the Community for European Research and Innovation on Security, or CERIS. You can look it up, you can sign up, etc. We work very closely with the agencies, with our friends from EULISA here, but also a lot with Frontex, for example. And one thing that we really try to do strongly is cooperating and improving the synergies on the funding instruments. our funding instrument, the research one, Horizon, can only fund research. And that's what we do. But especially for security, it's also linked by law. It's in the legal basis, it's in the regulations. It's also linked to the European funds that support civil security deployments, civil security activities, the Internal Security Fund for the police, law enforcement, and the Border Management and Visa Instrument for border management, travel facilitation, border surveillance, the flow of people, the work of border guards. Now, that fund, for example, can support from the demand side, can support buyers, customers, border authorities, for example, on acquiring solutions like the innovative solutions like those developed by METICOS. The BMVI, the Border Management and Visa Instrument, is an European instrument of 6.7 billion euros between 2021 and 2027. 2/3 of it is managed by the member states. It's like a structural fund kind of management. It's not managed by the Commission in the sense that you do not find calls on their portal like for Horizon. They're managed by the member states. And 1/3 of it is programmed by the Commission, but still in the largest part managed then by the member states. It's the member states authorities who decide, I'm going to use this European EU co-funding to do something. So the key message there for the various partners of METICOS and other research projects that achieved something is, while in an Horizon project, industry, academia, innovators work together to do R&D and bring along the authorities, also because you need to, because you have the exceptional eligibility conditions, you bring along 4 or 5 authorities to work with you. After that, if we want to use BMVI funding and EU funding from that instrument to do the next step, deployment, acquisition, etc., is the authorities who decide and bring along the innovators. Because it's the authorities who decide on what we need, what are our operational capabilities, where we can use innovation. And to give you an example, as I said, BMVI, this instrument, the large majority of it is used in national programs. Each country has an allocation, very large allocation of funding, and then can decide in 7 years, I'm going to spend this funding to do this, this, and that. And there is in the legal basis that the fund can be used to do pilots, transfer, uptake, deployment of innovative solutions, especially those coming from union-funded security research projects. And to incentivize that, the normal funding rate of a BMVI project is 75%. The member state needs to put 25%. If it's an innovative project taking up from union-funded security research, it's 90%. The member state only has to come up with 10%. It's an incentive. And that can be done at any time today during the multi-annual financial framework. On top of that, the Commission, as I said, programs some specific actions, some additional things where the Commission thinks that there needs to be some incentive to put some additional funding for member states who want to do other additional things that have a specific EU added value or transnational values. And some of those programs for the current 3 years, for an additional 1.05 billion euros, include, for example, integrated solutions for the facilitation and automation of border crossings, for optimizing border controls and reduction of waiting times, especially during the first months after the start of EES and ATS. We have seen it why. Facilitation and automation of land and maritime border crossing or national facilitation programs. Or again, promoting new technologies and border checks, taking up research results, or use of artificial intelligence for border management, or innovative solutions for border controls and a well-functioning Schengen area. So these are all points where there's going to be there is today additional funding available for member states who want to do projects on these points, on top of what they can already do with the national programs and allocation for the BMVI funding. So what's the catch on that? Well, the catch is that only the member states' authorities, the designated managing authorities or in each country that manage the BMVI can say, we're going to do a project, putting money on this, putting EU co-funding and using the money on this. Because as I said, it's them who are designated to take the decisions or, for example, to present proposals for additional funding to the Commission, which means that there needs to be a coordination at national level to propose ideas. Let's do a project further piloting and exploiting the solutions that METICOS developed. How to do an agreement on that, that's very much up to you. It could be the authorities who participated in the consortium trying to work at national level with the managing authorities and saying, why not we put or exploit the current funding or the additional funding on BMVI and do a project to deploy this if we need EU co-funding on top of whatever could be the national budget. It could also go to other countries who maybe the authorities did not participate in the consortium and who already know very well what you did, but they don't know, but they may be interested. And on that, there are ways to raise awareness and advertise, quote unquote, what you did. Examples to do that is what I mentioned earlier, the work that we do and we try to collaborate with Frontex, who not only can be aware and observe the Horizon-funded research projects because we collaborate with them and they're aware, and they can publicize with the community of European Border and Coast Guards, the national ones, but also Frontex is a border guard itself. It has operational standing corps. It has border guards that work at border crossing points or in green borders that help national ones. They could be interested themselves in the capacities that solutions like the ones of METICOS and others provide. And on that, I was very glad to hear that yesterday at the security research event, Frontex colleagues were very, very interested, and we can work together to promote even more. But the key message is to work at the national level with the managing authorities, because there are EU opportunities, funding, very practically, to do these things. BMVI is one, maybe the most direct one. There may be others. There are others in the European Regional Development Funds, where we see many examples of solutions and technologies coming out of security research being taken up for that. But in all cases, there needs to be an initiative from the national authorities. And so you need to work with the authorities and with your country system to decide that and exploit those opportunities which exist. So I really wanted to put out those couple of key messages, opportunities, and how to try to cooperate at national levels. Hope it was worth it. And I also think that somehow answers at least the first question from my side.
Thank you very much. Actually, yes, thank you for this presentation. It was very helpful, and it also gives me a great assist for the first question, which is basically about the EU funding mechanisms that are currently facilitating the transfer of knowledge and technology developed by the EU funding projects to the market. So I will continue with the two of our other panelists. He can also have an opening statement and maybe comment on what Giulio has said.
All right. I'm also going to touch a bit complementary to what Giulio said already, because he touched the possibilities if you want to continue within the border management. But I also liked your previous question at the previous panel when you said what, how, whom, is the classical questions, and I think the project needs to answer that. What are you interested to push forward? When we look, for example, at the different solutions you have multiple technological solutions here, that most of them are sector agnostic. Whether you're talking about technology acceptance or any kind of civilian acceptance, citizen acceptance for anything. It could be a restaurant technology, for example. It could be a transportation sector. It could be, oh, do you like open space when you work? You know, it could be anything. When we look, for example, at the use of AI and also the bias, the work on the bias, AI bias, that's very interesting because it's going to come in the field again and again. When we look at the virtual reality, for example, yesterday at the SRE, the amount of people who came and saw the virtual reality, not just for the border management point of view, but from the point of view of other sectors like fire brigade, for example, but it could be anything that had to do with training. Extremely interesting. So there's questions there that need to be answered, and then we can see, based on that, how are you going to get the funding? And okay, Giulio touched, as I said, the aspects that relate clearly to border management, security. But if we now extend beyond that, you have InvestEU, for example, that offers a lot of possibilities to have a look into a variety of possibilities when you're looking for investment. Because if we look at some of the technologies, yes, you definitely have a lot of universities, research centers around the table, which means that you're still a low technology readiness level. Okay, there are big companies as well, and I can see that they come with a certain knowledge of how to do the marketing, the financing, and everything. They know where they're going. They have their plans, and that's why they have already expanded the solutions. When I saw, for example, some of the solutions, they know that they might be using this technology for something else than what is being used in medicals. But for those who may have been, for example, focused on a certain field, again, you have to get out of the box and think more broadly. And that would mean lots of different solutions. So it could be national solutions, and already Giulio touched upon. It could be investors that may come and say, okay, we're interested, but we're interested in placing this XYZ. It could be other companies that you might sell the technology, the IPRs, or the license. So everything now, all these questions comes down to two words, basically, business plan. So you need to go back as Medicos, look into what you have done together as a consortium, but also separately, because it might not be the full system, it might be individual components, which means then you have to think about the business plan. What am I going to do about the individual components, and where am I going to go next with them, either as a consortium together or individual companies? Some may already know, because they're big companies and they know how the game is being played. Some may need more assistance, and that's where you have things like the Innovation Rider, for example, or the booster, the results booster from the EU, that can help you with offering you services, for example, to understand what's the next thing. How can I build my business plan? How can I pitch towards investors? What kind of investment plans are there around that I could look for money, for example, and then move on along with that. And it's good to look at towards regulations, because also regulations have a big impact on technology. If a regulation says that everybody has to use X, Y, Z, of course, that automatically means from the technology that's going to profit. But you cannot always wait for the regulation. You cannot wait for everybody to be forced into something. You have to also take the action and see what paths you're going to find for your technologies to mature further. So with that, I sort of throw the ball back to the project, basically, and this is what I told to panelists. It's now waiting for the final deliverable on the business plan. I very much look forward towards the end of the month to have it.
Can you hear me? Oh, yes. You can go ahead and I will comment on at the end.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm not sure what else I will be able to add. But what I will do, I will stand from the research point of view, and I will just shift the gears a little bit back to the research life cycles, and we probably look at the innovations life cycle, how it started from the research, and what type of challenge actually we face during the research. So you talk about a few points here, like the applicability or the feasibilities. And like the first things we might talk about is the funding and the resource allocations that you mentioned. Like we could build the technologies for restaurants, but there's not too much fundings that actually available for restaurants technologies. So it's like you could see more fundings towards like border control securities, more funding towards like healthcare, transportations, but not more towards like restaurants, which is a normal activity which people do. So this is something that that it's usually challenged on the research, and we call it the valley of death. Actually, that we still in the closed loop, that we're just following where is the fund are. The second things you talked about is the business plan, and to align the research or the output of the research, which is the innovation, with the market needs. Usually, from the research standpoint, we always face some challenges that how to follow the market, because we need a lot of expertise to do the market analysis, and we need to work with a lot of industries to be able to follow what is going on the trend right now. So that's also one of the things which and you mentioned the regulatory compliance, which I said to navigate on these regulatory requirements, because now privacy, data protection, ethics, and data ethics has become the trend, and we need to take care of this. And from the research point of view, that the relevant policy or the compliance requirements also made a challenge. I think in the first panel we talked about data and how we could get data, because we could work from the research point of view. We could work with a synthetic data. We could produce a result. It could come up with a good innovations. But does this feasible to the market? Then that's another question, because if this close to the reality or what is really on the demand. Another point is the scalability and the adaptabilities. Like we have been talking with VLabs and the coordinators about the METICOS platform and how feasible it would be adopted. For example, we are considering healthcare, for example, and we are considering after Corona, we all moved towards this online teaching. So now how the technology is being adopted in higher educations, and what is the acceptance of these technologies by the societies, and how these technologies could be adopted more, and the scalabilities of the technologies. Does it fit to everybody, or is just like limited to a different audience or specific audience on this? And also the intellectual properties. We have different components, and this is the main challenge. You mentioned about the national fundings. We are aware of the national fundings where we can do, but we still like a lot of challenge related to the intellectual properties, because if the component has been developed from a partners in Greece, then they can apply in Greece, but then probably some other partners who has been already involved, then they will not be able to get funding. So that's also a challenge, and a lot of discussions has been going through this. So how to do this actually in reality? The culture and the organization wise, because working with border control in different projects, we have to understand the cultures. And before, as a researchers, before we can say this technology can be adopted to something else, we need to understand the other audience, whom and what, and based on their needs. Do they really need this, or is something that they just take it as a luxury tools that they want to improve? I'll just keep it there. So probably just to keep it short. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, okay. Well, actually, you're a very efficient panel, because you already touched my second question, which was about what else and what potential the components in the solution has, since this is not strictly for border management. Since we do not develop a border management tool, we assess and we monitor existing tools. So I would say that you pretty much answered this. From our side, as METICOS, we have done this work in terms of exploitation. We have tried with the business planning, with creating some business models, some SWOT analysis, see what other markets we can include. And you will see in the last deliverable, as Solon also mentioned, what we have included. And you can give us your feedback also then. I can if there are no other comments from the panelists, see if there are any questions from the audience, or I can go to the next question, which will be the third. No? Okay. So, moving a bit back to the border management, as you would have seen, we have also put an effort in clustering with other projects, cooperating, also because we want to evaluate other tools. We want to see what else is out there. We're very happy to also have some representatives for the cluster that we have created here, from the Border External Security Cluster. So I would like to ask you, based on your opinion, if you think that the cooperation between projects at this stage could also be helpful, better address the needs of innovation and provide some solutions for the border management. If you could, from your perspective, cooperate with such clusters, and if yes, how would you envisage this cooperation? So, I don't know. Yeah, you can go ahead.
Go with the
Giulio.
same cycle.
Yeah.
I remember, I think in 2020 or very early 2020, it was just before the lockdowns kicked in. We did a kickoff with the new projects from the call of 2019 here in Brussels, and one of the things we said was exactly that we thought it could be a good a good potential, which underexploited potential often in projects. Two, that projects that are doing research more or less in the same area, more or less at the same time, get more in touch with each other. And it's also one of the reasons why we decided to bring projects together a bit more. And I have to say that we have been trying and doing it and not doing it, favoring it in a few times. But it's not always been very, very easy. Sometimes, you with also good reasons, but you have to push projects a bit. It was quite positively surprising to see that this cluster was able to attract so many projects and bring together different groups. And I don't think it's the part which is not surprising is that it came from METICOS, because METICOS is doing research work in an area which is kind of enabling of other capability areas. So we have in our program funds other research projects from Horizon in the border management areas on more specific, maybe, or technical areas, which could be document security, biometric recognition, risk-based border management, or even border surveillance. That look very much and very intensively to developing a new solution for a specific problem. And we could see this, at least I could see this potential mutual interest between METICOS and the other project, with you offering them a way to do something they should do, like checking what would be the acceptability or impact with a number of other measures of whatever they're developing, and for you to gather more validation and data for your model. Now, you tell us how well it was, in practice. But what I think useful is also that some of these projects are still continuing and probably will continue, and so they will now keep some of the things that they saw from METICOS's work and opportunities, and it could also be beneficial for the uptake of whatever METICOS has developed, because it will kind of be kept in mind. So I think it was good for that.
Just to add to Giulio, any kind of clustering to exchange information, do networking is a positive element because it helps projects. I mean, we have other projects now that even your project is trying to help. I was asking Pantelis about some of my other projects recently, and he said, yeah, I might have this solution. Why don't you contact these people? This kind of clustering, it might sound simple, but the networking is there to offer solutions, and it could offer also possibilities for you. New proposals you might find through this cluster that you have similar ideas that perhaps are not linked to METICOS, but to something else. But you have the common knowledge that if you put it together, there's a new proposal coming out. So there's all different possibilities that can come from clustering. And I'm all positive about continuing as much as possible. And now the question is, can we do something about it? I think from DG Home, I don't know, Giulio, but from REA point of view, we're not there to continue a cluster. It's up to the projects to continue the cluster. But of course, within the funding schemes that we have, if, for example, you're applying for another call, funding could become available through your call when you apply through the proposal to continue such clusters. So it's important that you speak now to the members of the cluster and try to find some solutions of what's next. And it could be that you can combine forces, perhaps through the next proposal that someone will win. And I'm sure that it's all the usual players around. Someone will win and someone could continue. So it could be part of a proposal that could go back into the calls. So that's things to think about. But overall, I would say it's a must to continue such clusters for the benefit of everybody. And I think METICOS has done a remarkable job there to try and create such a cluster and to keep it going. So well done. Thumbs up.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's so great to hear that we in METICOS have done very well. And I think I'll speak from my point of view that the reasons why I also love METICOS so much is that because I think we focus more on bottom-up approach, not the top-down, not like some other clusters. So when I say bottom-up from the engineering or from a design point of view, I mean user-centric designs. So we took it from like when we talk about the border control, we took it from the travelers themselves, like what they really want and what they want and how they want it. And when we talk about collaborations, I kind of agree, and we do that, collaborate on different projects. But coming to this approach, like whether it's top-down and bottom-up, usually many of the projects we don't meet in the middle point. So it's like, I'm not quite sure, or probably there could not be an answer right now. It's like, but then this is something, it depends on how the project is approaching. And I think it's so great to hear that METICOS approach has already made a change on this. And that's so great to know. Yeah.
And fully what you said, I've used before, the combination of bottom-up and top-down. It can only lead to success. So if you manage to do that, it's a big plus.
Yeah, I think if we made an agreement on this, like because projects, they can follow which approach they want. It's either from policy, let's say, of the cluster, what they like. Because when you talk about border technology, there is morely top-down, that the borders want this for like border civilians. It's nothing much you can do there from the research point of view because it's a top-down. We need to secure this, or we need to improve this. But when we talk about civilians projects, like something which is bottom-up, or starting from the citizens or from the individuals, that's more room that we can work on towards improving the civilians' life by providing this technology. And then there's a more room to investigate and to experiment. It's not very limited when it's top-down.
Thank you all very much. We're also very happy that you like this idea because we have worked a lot with the cluster. We have a lot of projects participating at this point. Some of them have already finished, some of them are ongoing, and some of them are in the beginning. So they have a lot of future ahead of them. And we will have a workshop with some of them after this panel, so we'll get some insights. And with this, this brings me to the last question of the panel. which is mostly about the organization and culture and the mindset of border control agencies and the influence that this can have when they try to adopt an EU-funded project solutions like METICOS or other similar projects. So what strategies do you think that the agencies can adopt in order to be more receptive, and what challenges do you see when the agencies interact with the projects? Who would like to start?
Maybe I'll take the pressure of Giulio.
Of course, go ahead.
It's always hard to be the first one, I think. But I think we have to be reasonable in terms of expectations. Even if we look at, for example, Frontex, EULISA, there are agencies that do the day-to-day work. And within that day-to-day work, they need to deliver what they have to deliver. When you go to them, a lot of the times, or any kind of end user, you have to come up with a full package of solution. And it's mostly because also they have a requirement that they're looking for something. So how can you influence the adaptation of projects like METICOS, for example? First of all, you have to come with a complete solution, because when you are at low technology readiness level, it's very hard for them to say, yeah, when are you going to get this done in 5, 10 years now? Because you have to think about everything within the package. You have to think about maintenance. You have to think about training. You have to think about the human factors. You have to think about manufacturing, because if they come and tell you tomorrow, can you deliver me 10,000 units? What are you going to do? Who's going to deliver that? Right now, as it is, METICOS is not ready for that. But you could, within the whole pipeline, of course, through other EU funding or through national funds or through investors, build that capacity through spin-offs, through the big companies that are involved in the project, etc., in a sense where you can actually go to this, to the various agencies. And it might not be just Frontex. This is what I was saying. It's a lot of things are sector agnostic, in my view, in METICOS, and offer a package which becomes then very interesting for them to look at. But I think, and I've been saying this quite a bit, when it comes to the elephant in the room is usually the budget. It's the money, right? And I haven't heard much of it being mentioned today. And unfortunately, an old anecdote that I got when I was also doing research and technology in the defense sector, they were like, you can produce for me a technology that goes to the moon and comes back in 3 minutes, but if it's not aligned with my budget lines, sorry, I cannot buy it. So it's also a matter of budgets when it comes to the different agencies or the national entities, institutions to look into the technology. So you might need to be thinking also about how the budgets are aligned. So when you go to the end user, there is already a requirement by the end user. There is some sort of budget which is going to become available. This kind of thing right now, it's something which in my view is probably missing, but it's an essential element. So there's, apart from just requirement, yes, I would like to have that, there's also the budget alignment that has to be thought for. Okay?
So in 2019, a new regulation for the European Border and Coast Guard was adopted, which is the current one. Introduced a lot of new things, and one new thing that it introduced was particularly important for us and for you, which is this idea for the first time of a capability development planning for the European Border and Coast Guard, which it was and is structured with national capability development plans, then brought together, coordinated by Frontex, by the agency, with its own capability development plan, and merged into an EBCG capability roadmap. So that was in theory. It was understandably much more difficult in practice to actually do that because, border authorities in member states are not used to do that. A capability development plan means what I have to develop for tomorrow, what I need to develop for the next 5 or 10 years. It's been very difficult, but we are close to a first version on a BCG capability roadmap late this year or early next year. It will be a first version. It won't be, a perfect planning for procurement tomorrow and research and innovation but it's a good first step. So a first, in the let's say higher level step on trying to do better at this, connecting the users, at least some of the users, both border control agencies with innovation, is something like that. Whatever will be planned more seeing in the long term will inform where we're going to invest in innovation, where they're going to invest in innovation. But as Solon was saying, if we try to go a bit more practical, and I think that it's very important to go to buyers, users like border control agencies, especially like them who do not really have an innovation culture, a risk-taking culture, with a product or a service that is already validated, or with a very simple and clear plan for validating it with them. And secondly, linked to the point on budget, not only on budget, but really understanding from their point of view for the, whatever is the border control agency or Frontex or the National Border Guard, who and how does procurement, how does it work? It may be different than buying or selling in any other area. It may be different than public procurement in other areas. And it's very important, especially for relatively new actors. Sometimes in research consortia, you have very big companies that are used to work with those type of buyers. Other times not necessarily is necessarily more difficult, but it may be different. So understanding how procurement works. This was something else which I can't remember. If you will bring back to me, I'll say.
Thank you so much. So I think I'll just put a small comments. That's what my first point in the first question, that funding and budget. And I don't want to say it very clearly that we are a researcher just hunting budgeted everywhere. So you know that. So we do this. But the problem is that with these limited resources, I have to admit that we are the engine room for the innovations research. And the industries has many times in many meetings and workshops, they admitted that they can't do anything without the academia or the research, because we are the one who produce the innovations. And due to the limited budget, that usually we don't go for. So for examples, when you consider the RIA, the research and innovation actions, usually we focus more towards TRL6. So you mentioned about we have to present the complete solutions, which I can say that's not possible within 3 years. And when the end users think or see that we are like sun to shine on everything, that will not be possible. So I think we try to mitigate some challenge with more knowledge and more engagements with the end users to tell, or to at least to inform them that there's something called a research life cycles. Usually it doesn't go, it's not born to be complete. It has to go through steps. And if you don't involve, and I think in the first panel, we talk a lot about the trust, the data that we need, and the helps, the requirements. In order to have a complete solutions, you need involvement of these end users, or the ones who's requiring the solutions, whether they are the border controls or the healthcare or the teachers at the university. So we need more involvement. And I understand that budget and resources always the limits, But I think through communications, we manage a research project, which is for 3 years to mitigate some of these challenges. And we make a lot of workshops, a lot of gatherings where we discuss and we come up with solutions, even without budget or without budgeting for that. So I think it's more, and me and Shula, during the lunch, we talked about trust, and then she came up with something. I have to quote her that she said, the more you know, the more to know, there are more to know. So the cycle will never end when it comes to the complete solution. And what is the complete solutions? Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Are we finished? Oh, okay. So I would just, yeah, of course.
Sorry. So I'm the project advisor, as you mentioned earlier. So the last thing I want to see is your project staying on the shelf. This is the last thing I want to see from your project results. It's not even on the shelf anymore because you hand all the deliverables electronically. So it's going to be just data, even less space, perhaps more energy. So I'm all for it to try to find solutions. It's just important, as you said, to think about the valley of death and the steps, but there also needs to be a step out of the researcher and perpetual EU funding requests. It's not going to get you to the market through constant EU funding. Okay, you might have gone to the SME instrument in the past and things like that, EIC. There are fundings that will help you, and there's definitely that aspect, but you also need to think from a business development point of view, what components can be taken and where. But the last thing I want to see is your work just ending with the project with just a report. I definitely want to see a lot more. I want to hear that, 3-5 years from now. I don't care if I have to wait 5 years, as long as I see that some results have been materializing into something concrete. And I think that's the important thing, that some of you might come to me 5 years from now on LinkedIn, or I don't know where will be, let's say, our posts at the time, and say to me, we remember that technology we used to work in METICOS, now it's here. So for example, when I saw the interest on the virtual reality, just the virtual reality aspect yesterday at the SRE, I mean, for me, that is great already, because I know that a number of interested parties are going to come and try and do something with this. And I think that's the important thing to remember. Let's find ways to make things more successful, not just staying as reports on a shelf. Want to end this?
I remembered.
Please go ahead.
It was just to underline that at some point in our program, we introduced the mandatory participation of the practitioners. So in the first few years of the EU Civil Security Research Program, that was not obligatory. You had great research programs, projects with industry and academia, etc. Then they developed some solution. It was great, but then the moment that maybe got in touch with a potential user down the line, if you figured out that, well, something operationally wouldn't. So we introduced that. They have to be in the consortium, and with METICOS, and that's great, you have authorities in the consortium, which is useful to have user requirements, to have trials, to do what you were saying, maybe explain to them, getting them a bit more used to the research cycle. Okay, it's not tomorrow, but you have to work with it. But it can also be useful to understand the other points that we were saying for the, those in the innovation side, understand how acquiring, procuring something could be, how does it work, what are the channels, what are the cycling and timing in a big public law enforcement, often administration like border control authorities. And the opportunity of having them in the consortium until today is also of having an advantage, a privileged access to their vision on, okay, how could this be used? In how much time? What do we need? How is this something like this purchased? Can it even be purchased? So that could be a useful tool. Not necessarily easy, but useful.
Great. Thank you very much for this. I have no further questions. Are there any comments or questions from the audience? Okay. So thank you very much for this very efficient panel, I would say.